Everyone's there. My crew's there. I get to be the one person that gets to greet everybody and welcome everybody.
And you're very good at it, too, because you seem really happy to be there. And when people that are somewhere are happy to be there, it just automatically makes you like, oh, okay.
Welcome to Creative Ops, a podcast for creative people.
Hey, everybody. Christopher Talon here, host of Creative Ops, a podcast for creative people. Today, I've got one for you with Andrea Shaner. Andrea is the producer of Fox17's Morning Mix here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We met on the set of that show when I was on there talking about my book, and we just immediately connected over our shared history of being in the AV club in high school. She obviously pursued that into becoming a professional television person. Originally, she wanted to be on air, but ended up becoming a producer instead. And we talk about her career path, how she got there, what she's doing now, and she also gives some advice to creative people who might try to be getting on the news to talk about their stuff, give you maybe a better shot at doing that. So shout out to all the crew at Fox17 Morning Mix. Also, Michelle Dunaway, who interviewed me. Shout out to Michelle. Shout out to Brooks, who ran the cameras there, because that dude was seriously working overtime. I was trying to stare right into all the cameras. They were like, whatever you do, don't look at the camera, look at Michelle, and I broke that rule. We talk about that, too. What a pain in the ass I was as a as a guest on that show. So, here, let's stop talking about it, and let's play that interview with Andrea Shaner, television producer at Fox17 on Fox17's Morning Mix here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Is it frustrating ever for you when you're like, man, this person's really interesting, but we only have, a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes to talk to them. I just hope that people go see them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's kind of one of the things that the Morning Mix, we try to give everybody a little more time, normally in a news interview. So for our morning news program that's running from 4:30 until 9 a.m., anyone that's on, usually, I'd say between 2.5 to 3 minutes is usually the time given for somebody that comes in for an interview. And as you know, that's super, super short. And they can't get anything in. It's basically, if it's an event, it's who, what, where, when, why, and that's about it.
Yeah. That was my biggest thing. It was like, I'm only going to be up there for so long. I have to get everything right. And if I miss something, it's just gone. That opportunity's gone.
Yeah. Yeah. And even on the Morning Mix being a little bit more of a longer format, so like our lifestyle show that I run, we try to give anyone from 4 to 6 minutes. Now, for some, that can be way too long. Others, we can totally fill that. And then I'm like, oh, like you were saying, like, this is really good. I'm like, I want another 10 minutes. I want to fill the whole half hour with this. But then that's good to some extent, because then in my mind, I'm like, okay, this is somebody that I want to have back. Somebody that maybe I do want to give more time to, or maybe I want to go a different avenue. Like maybe I want to do an on location with them, or figure out something else that we can do to tell maybe more of their story.
Yeah, and I've noticed that, because the spoiler alert, or behind the scenes, however you want to talk about it, sometimes the way these things work is someone who's been on your show will say, hey, you know who you should talk to? And I got to give props to my friend Mike Logan, who's been on your show.
That's right.
Several times. Basically, anytime he has something going on in Grand Rapids, it feels like he's able to come on and talk about it. And so he put me in touch with you specifically. Thanks,
right.
Mike. Oh, this is actually goes in a completely different direction, but I want to say it before I forget it. I sent out some press releases to some other news outlets outside of Grand Rapids.
Right.
And one said, hey, we'd love to talk to you. It's $150 for a 1-minute segment, $350 for a 3-minute segment. Are you interested? I was like, no.
Interesting.
But it was, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, who, had a similar, like, hey, this is what's going on in the community, but they charge money to be on their show.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Do you guys does anyone work all that model often?
So for our show, The Morning Mix,
Yeah.
it is considered to some extent a paid show. So some of our clients will pay for what we consider annuals to be on our show. And by paying the money, though, they get to determine a little bit more of where they want to be placed within the week. They get...
Yeah, because I came on a Friday, and I think somebody even apologized to me before, and I'm like, why? They're like, you're not going to get quite the viewership on a holiday Friday.
Right. They also get more control, of their editorial content. If you think about it at news, you're going to come and sit down, but the anchor is really going to ask you the questions. They're not really going to ask what you want to talk about, and they're going to control the segment.
Yeah.
Where on the lifestyle show and those that pay for their segments, they really get control of the content. And they really get to write the questions out how they want us to ask them. And very rarely, depending on who the client is, do we really deviate from that. So that's kind of where it differs for those parts. But
even that process feels weird to me because, I mean, you guys say, like, give us some possible talking points.
Right.
But I've had people, even for other podcasts, that'll say, send us a list of 5 to 15 questions that you want us to ask. I'm like, I don't know. That's strange to me because, well, as you're experiencing right now, I like to just sit down and talk to people and see where it goes.
And that's kind of why I think, too, we've even just kept it on our show to be 5 questions to allow that. So somebody like you that comes in to talk with, our hosts, that they have the opportunity to chat a little bit more beyond those 5 questions.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if you have it all too tied up in a little pretty bow, I don't feel like we get a really good conversation out of it.
Yeah.
So by only having a couple main talking points, it just helps them kind of maybe start the interview. But I wouldn't say, by any means will it be the whole interview, because then they get to fill it in. You may say something and then they're like, oh, that's a great jumping off point for another question for them. So,
I didn't even... It was pretty spontaneous in that I didn't even realize we were going because she started saying things, and Michelle Dunaway started saying things about me, but I didn't know she was saying things about me because it was stuff that you guys had pulled from my website, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, they're talking about me right now.
What's going on? I know, right?
The one thing that I look back on that and go, oh, I've got to do better the next time I'm on, is I feel like Brooks was just constantly like whack-a-mole.
Bruh.
I kept looking at the camera, and then he would change to a different one, then I'd look at that one.
I think that would be the one key. So going back, do not look at the cameras.
Oh, it was so hard for me because there's so many things happening. They've all got moving clocks under them that are to the second. I'm just like, ooh, man, this is really hard for somebody with ADD.
I know. Well, it would have been even worse back in the day because when I started, there was a person on each of those cameras.
Yeah.
So at that point in time, they were not, automated. Half of our stuff now is automated, where when I started, that was definitely not a thing. There would be a person behind each camera, plus the floor director. Mike Davis has been there forever holding down the fort for us. But it's interesting to see that take two,
And I was shocked when I was like, wait a minute, there's more people on air than there are crew? That's insane.
Yeah.
Because at the time, it was Michelle and
we had Todd, Todd. Yep.
Michelle, Todd, and then the gentleman was in there doing the news or doing the weather segment too. So, and then before you walked in there, I think it was just Brooks was the only off-camera person in there, right?
Yeah, correct. Yep.
And he does all the cameras right there from a computer.
Yep. So he's able to kind of adjust on the wherever he needs it, and then
he throws up the overlays and
calls it good. Yeah. Which is crazy too, because on the back end, so back in the booth, we're producing where I kind of have been pretty much my whole life. before it was myself. There was audio person was back there. The director was back there. Somebody punching the keys up to make sure all the video and everything ran. So there was a good 5 or 6 people back there. Where now on any given day, 2 of us, so being the director and the producer, and then maybe somebody to automate or to, do the cameras. And that's about it. It's just a whole different world. It's very interesting to see the transition of all of it.
Yeah. I guess that's just the way of the world, too, because when I was in the Navy, I remember they were like, the job that you do now used to be 2 different jobs, and they've since condensed that and another job into one job. So it's like the one job used to be 3 jobs, and that's just, you get these hyper-specialized people now.
Yeah. And that was actually, too, even at one point for a producer, our main focus was always putting the rundown into like our shows together and writing the content. I used to have to go to a separate person to have them always make my graphics. Had to go to a separate person to actually insert video into my shows. Tapes were being put manually into like VHS tapes back in the day that were sticking in, flying around, where that's not even a thing anymore. Like now I'm the producer, there's so much more on us. Like we actually have a little system within our system that we actually create more of the graphics than not these days. So we're writing the show, we're putting the rundown together, we're creating most of the graphics, and if it's something really specialized, then we do have a graphics team or graphics department that will handle it. But on any given day, we're handling a lot more of that. We're sending videos to some of our editors, but all of our kind of clips are automated and right in our rundown, so we can see when stuff is ready and not ready. So a lot of that has changed too. Like you said, very much like, everyone used to have their own little thing where now you really have to be able to do like multiple jobs and be one person to do it all.
Just in research for marketing, the book that I wrote, people used to think that if you got a literary agent who got you into one of the big 5s, then you were set. You just had to put out a book, have somebody take your picture, go on a little tour, and you were done. But there was a guy who was on a podcast I listened to called The Reluctant Book Marketer. Really good author named Stephen James. And he said now, big publisher, he said he sold at least 1 million titles of every book he's put out.
Right.
And they said, it's pretty much on you to do your marketing, your social media. We don't do that anymore. He's like, okay. But fortunately, he's got like a teenage 20-something-year-old daughter who does a lot of it for him, or at least shows him how to. But yeah, that you do it is, I don't know. Yeah. This is where editing comes in. It'll make it sound like I was had a point to all that. What was it like? Because we talked when we were on the set there. We both got into this kind of stuff when we were in high school. I was a kind of not really into anything specifically in school, but I thought AV was fun. We did movies. We did that, like you said, we had that thing where you could put in like 8 different VHS tapes and cut it all onto one. Yes. To go from that to this in a relatively short amount of time, have you seen people that are just like, I can't do that, and people that just kind of fall to the side when they're like, man, this is too much, because they've been doing it the old way so long that when they were like, you now do the graphics, you now do this, and it's just you and one other person in there instead of you telling 5 people what to do.
Yes. And this one thing that's really important is somebody of my age that's been doing this, like you said, since high school, you really have to want to adapt to everything that's new.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, like all the social media. That's a huge thing that's part of our show, because to some extent, who knows how many people are truly going to be watching local TV in the next, 5 to 10 years. But we know that everybody's pulling stuff up on their phones, the YouTube, all that social media is just so important these days. So somebody like me, like back when we started, that was not a thing.
Yeah.
TV was the cream of the crop. That's everybody who watched TV at night. You watched your morning news. You watched your, during lunch, you watched, your quick little half hour. You got all your evening news, your weather in the evening. And people did that, where now that's honestly, it's not always a thing. Mm-hmm. So there are definitely people in our industry who are like, oh, well, I don't want to do that social media stuff, or I find it too difficult and I don't want to adapt to it. And that definitely puts them on a different level. And even me recently, we've actually added TikTok to the morning mix. And
Everyone says you got to be on TikTok. You got to be on TikTok.
We went back and forth for a really long time because for our age range, like anywhere from maybe like 25 to like 45 is kind of where we're kind of targeting.
Yeah,
for
people
our
that are
show.
going out and spending money and that kind of thing, yeah.
Right. People were more on the Instagram part of it is our big one. Then kind of Facebook. Twitter's like, I won't lie, Twitter's on the bottom. And the TikTok is kind of in that weird phase. And we went back and forth for a long time. And then finally I said, okay, like we decided we're going to do this. So I have somebody who is definitely more of a millennial than I am on my staff. And bless her heart, she's amazing because she knows how to do that.
Yeah.
And I've taken it upon myself.
I might have met her in the green room.
Yes.
Dark hair?
Lindsay. So she had kind of dark hair, like lighter brown, blonde.
Darker than yours anyway.
Darker than mine. Yeah. And she's absolutely amazing. And so I gravitate to her a lot and say, okay, like what's trending? She puts together a lot of those videos, but then I feel like it's my job and my responsibility to sit down with her and be like, hey, can you show me how to put this video together? Can you show me why X, Y, and Z of this, is important?
Yeah.
And that's something that's really important is you have to be willing to want to go towards the future.
Yeah.
And go with it and not feel like you're just going to stick yourself kind of in a hole and be like, I'm done. And
it helps you not be like a totally out of touch boss too. I remember having to train when I was in Iraq, I had to train my boss. Like they're like, show him how to do everything. I was like, right. But I'm still the one who's going to do it. But they're like, yeah, but he still needs to know like how long it takes and what it, so that he's like, hey, what's going on? He'll know, oh, it's because this, and this.
Right.
Even though he doesn't necessarily the one doing it.
Yeah, and that was important too. Even, Lindsay was off for all of us week on her vacation. So, we have our jobs divvied up. But if somebody, we are such a short staff, there's literally like 5 of us. And if one of us is gone, then we have to pick up the slack.
Everybody else feels that just a little bit more, yeah.
Right. So like I had to be like, okay, like she wanted me to post something on TikTok. Well, cool. Like that was easy to do now because she sat down, we've talked and we've gone over everything. The Instagram, the Twitter, like, stuff that I'm comfortable with. Like that was a piece of cake. But it's good to be able to have those extra skill sets and be willing to, just jump on board and be like, okay, hands up in the air. We can do this. We're going to try this. And I think that's key. You have to keep creating different content. You have to be able to see what people are gravitating towards and what they're interested in.
So we, as I mentioned, we're talking a little bit in the green room and then even on set right up until it was my turn to go up there because we just started nerding out about our old AV experiences. What was it that brought you into it? Was it something you were very intentionally into? Did a friend say, hey, come over here and make a movie with us or what?
To be honest with you, I think it was when I was really young. I was always into TV, specifically the weather. Always used to watch morning news, like Today's Show, like Good Morning America. I was really obsessed with that. And then my high school, when I got to that point, it was a brand new high school, and this was the first one in our county to have a TV studio. And I had known that I'd always wanted to, at one point, to be in front of the camera, actually. And then literally as soon as I could take that class, I jumped right in. And the funny part was right away, that wasn't exactly what I thought I'd be doing. Like I was interested too in like physical therapy. You know how you like kind of gravitate, you have a bunch of different things in your head.
I hated it when anyone told me, even up to the point when I was in my mid-20s, like, but what do you want to do? I'm like, I want to write stories. I want to talk to people. I might get into journalism. I might teach, like pick something.
Right. And I felt like, okay, well, I think I could be good at this. I think I could be good at that. But I guess when I really look back at it, like writing was I loved writing, reading, like you said, the journalism aspect of it. Like if you had me do like a book novel or anything like that, like I love that kind of stuff. Yeah. So when I kind of look back on it now, I think it all kind of like comes together and makes sense. But anyway, so we had that that class and I jumped in right away and I really took a leadership role in it. Meaning we actually did newscasts, like our morning announcements were all by TV. We did newscasts that were actually on our public access station for the entire county.
Yeah, I remember
where
those.
I grew up. Yeah. And so I was in charge of that. So I ran the teleprompter at that point. I actually got an air and did weather, doing weather graphics by like PowerPoint, which I think back, oh my gosh, like, putting together the happy little sun and all that. And then I directed some stuff. I edited some stuff. So I really just delved and put myself into like 150% and just really, really fell in love with it. And then at that point,
which you didn't know at the time.
Which I didn't know at the time.
What a producer is. I like all of it.
I like all of it. Right. So, at that point, when it came time to look for colleges, I grew up on the East Coast in Maryland.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I did. And my parents were very much like, okay, like we want you to stay close to home. So I looked at the University
Spoiler
of
alert.
Maryland. Spoiler alert, right, exactly. Didn't exactly go as planned. But I looked at Maryland and a bunch of other stuff that had like mass comm stuff out in the East Coast. And I was really disappointed because everything about it was not hands-on. Somebody who is at a high school, a brand new TV station, and is allowed to do all this hands-on work, knowing that you may not get into the TV station until your junior year. Like, that was kind of a bummer to me.
Yeah.
And it turned out I got really blessed. My communications teacher graduated from Ball State University.
Oh, okay. Is that where Letterman went?
Yeah, where Letterman went. Exactly. Actually, we've met his mom before. She's great lady. But that's a story. That's a story for another day. But so I was just excited when I got on campus that the very first thing I could actually go my freshman year, as soon as I walked in the building, and I could do the evening news with them, and I could get right in, hands-on experience.
Yeah.
And that was something that I didn't have to stop at all. Like, I could carry over. So right away, I was like, I just knew it was for me. And my mom's like, oh my gosh, like, this is 10 hours away, Andrea, like, this is crazy. And I'm like, no, like, I have this feeling that this is where I need to be. And this is important to me. So, yeah.
And then that worked out for you. You graduated, relatively on time anyway. I know very few people do the actual 4-year plan anymore, but
yeah, graduated on time, went through, and actually my minor ended up being operational meteorology.
yeah.
Because I still thought that I wanted to be on air and do the weather. So
I'm saying, like we talked about it,
Right,
but yeah,
well,
you did say that your in was kind of like, I actually wanted to do the weather, but
right. And then it turned out too that I met my husband there at Ball State. My college sweetheart, and we were in the same programs and everything. We both graduated with the same degree, but he ended up being the on-air meteorologist. And then I was like we had talked about all that writing and everything like that. I was like, oh, I kind of want to go behind the scenes and give my hand at producing.
That's good. For a second, I was worried it was going to turn into like a real life Anchorman situation where you're both like fighting to be the one. Yeah.
Right? It could have gone that way, but he just got really lucky that I really found my niche in the behind the scenes part of it. But
you just had more skills than he did. He could only do that one thing.
Right. I was more the leader, I think. I was the born leader, But it's been great. Like, I absolutely love it. So I right away was behind the scenes producing and had a job, pretty much both of us, right out of college. We were in South Bend for a little bit in the market there.
Well, that's the thing is, from what I understand anyway, I don't know, that people that work in like local television, local radio, you've got to be willing to move.
Yes. That's like a huge part of it. And that's it. Some things have changed a little bit. Like, for instance, when I graduated, Grand Rapids was a top, 30-plus market, 40-plus market, and you had to bounce to a lot of different places to get to Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
Like, that was kind of like almost an ending market.
I remember people on the radio, like, they would intern on a show, they would disappear for 8 years, then they'd show back up. They're like, yeah, I was in Nebraska, then I was in Montana, then I was outside of Chicago, now I'm in Grand Rapids.
Right. So we were in when Battle Creek, or WOTV 41 was around back in the day, as like an actual news station. That's kind of where we both started. He was an on-air meteorologist and I was behind the scenes producing and on the assignment desk. And then finally I got a full-time job producing the morning news at WSBT. So we kind of trekked down there and made that home for a couple years. And then when Fox 17 decided, hey, we're going to start morning news, because they started with their 10 o'clock news. So when they finally decided they were going to start a morning news show, my husband was like, okay, like I want to see if I can take that morning, meteorology spot. So he ended up getting that. And then I kind of moved behind him and kind of waited until a spot opened up at Fox, because, the news director at that point really thought that we'd make a great kind of package deal, as we like to say. You get a meteorologist, you get a producer.
Yeah.
So there's a couple months kind of gap in between, but then there's finally space. And then I got to start producing weekends on the news side of it. And we've been here for 16 years now. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so then how long were you doing the news at Fox 17 before they were like, all right, we're going to do this morning mix show, or had the morning mix been around and somebody left? How'd that work?
So Morning Mix was not around by any means, shape, or form when I got there. So I was in the news portion of it for about 11 years.
Okay.
My role completely has switched a lot of times. I started out doing weekend news, producing that. We had kind of a sort of lifestyle show called the 1-7 that we started that literally lasted for about like 6 months that they tried to put in the 5 o'clock time slot. But then when we were trying to compete against other news stations, it didn't exactly work. It was supposed to be a community show, but maybe a little fluff and stuff. So to some extent, maybe what the morning mix is now, but it just didn't really fit into that time frame. So that's when it kind of rolled over and ended up just becoming like our 5 and 6 o'clock news. So kind of, so I was in charge of that kind of show and I got to launch that. Worked on the assignment desk. When the morning show grew to 4 hours, they needed someone to start booking guests. And that's kind of where my role really took off was
4 hours of live TV every day would...
It's a lot.
Especially when it's news, too, because, you hear all the, unfortunately, today in this part of the world.
Yes. And I think to some extent, that's why I was excited and hoping that at some point we would start our lifestyle show. Because when I got into that client booking and meeting people in the community, I really, really enjoyed that. And I felt like that was kind of a niche. But I didn't know when they were going to start, this show. And then it finally got to the point, kind of like what we talked about a little bit earlier, people wanting to come on and really being like, oh, well, we want to control the content of it. We want to, then it got to the point, or, we want to sponsor weather. We want to sponsor XYZ. Well, you can't really have advertising and news together. I mean, let's be real. It's like oil and water. It does not mix. So how do you separate it? Well, you put another show together that's okay, where you mention it's paid content, but it makes sense. Yeah. So this is about 7 years now that the morning mix got started. As soon as they said we're doing this, I'm pretty sure I ran to my GM's office and I was like, I want this. Like, this is what I've been like waiting to do. And so they were kind enough. They gave me full control. I got to put together the entire kind of layout of the show. I got to launch it. It was such a cool thing to be able to do, knowing this is something I've always wanted to do and then finally get a chance to do it. So.
Did they build that studio like the way that they did for that show, or did you just kind of sneak into that space? Was it something else before?
Oh, it was always been in the studio for the news, and we've just had to adapt to it. And I think that's been the hardest part on that end of it is trying to figure out how to adapt it, yet how to change it up a little bit too.
Yeah, because it feels almost a little Willy Wonky to get back into the Fox17 Morning mix corner. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know in the future there's talks of being allowed to like adjust our set a little bit, or that we might get a redo, so to speak, of the set. So I hope that works out because there's a lot of cool features I think they're looking to put in that really may help the morning mix out, so to speak, and give us our own little quote unquote corner that we can kind of work with. So, yeah.
So how long have you been doing this show then?
So this show is December of this year. Will be 7 years old. Yeah.
7 years old, and you've been at Fox 17...
16, 7. It'll be 17 in March.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
And from the get-go, you guys kind of had your eye on Grand Rapids, you said, right?
Very much so. My husband grew up in Kalamazoo, so we're kind of, in his home area.
Yeah.
But for us, Grand Rapids was important, a great place to raise a family in the Midwest. And we absolutely love it. And I think, too, that's another thing that we have so many cool things in our community, so many great nonprofits, so many events going on.
Yeah.
Like, it just really lends itself to having some kind of a show like this, too.
Yeah. Especially when, unfortunately, a lot of people just kind of typecast the news as like doom and gloom with like maybe one little, here's a dog on a skateboard type of story,
Well, right. Exactly. And I think at some point, I always kind of wanted to get away from that. Yeah. After a while, it really does do a mental number.
And not even just that, because this is another thing I was thinking about. Fox, the main Fox News, can be polarizing to some people. Excuse me. And I was wondering if that invites people like, oh, you work for Fox. Let me tell you what I think.
We definitely, that happens actually quite a lot, where people don't realize that we're really not connected.
Yeah.
We'll get, as I like to call them, little nasty grams and this and that. And that's definitely something that, we get a lot of. And that's hard sometimes to be like, okay, we're not affiliated. Like, that's the national. Like, we don't even.
Sean Hannity and I don't hang out.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, I can't just put in a phone call to him. Yeah. Be like, hey, what's the deal? Yeah, exactly. So.
Yeah,
very much.
Yeah, I would imagine just any news organization, if you have a sticker on that, somebody's going to see that and be like, oh, I got to give this person a piece. Peace of my mind.
Yeah, it can go. That's the thing. It can go one of two ways. It can be like, hey, like really like what you're doing, really like your people, or oh, like just total different story.
Keep doing what you're doing, or you go to hell.
Yeah, exactly. Have a nice day. Yeah, get out of here. Yes.
What does a normal day look like at that place? Because I think I was one of the first segments. You guys start at 9?
Start at 9.
You start at 9. So what time does everybody actually show up, and what does scheduling and meetings and stuff for the show look like?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, COVID has really changed a lot of what we do.
Oh, I bet.
It has given my team specifically a lot of flexibility. So on any given day, we usually all now really start our days off at home. So I'm up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm able to go through my rundown, finish a couple things that needs to get done. And that's really from like 5 until like 8 o'clock. I do a quick switcheroo, get my son on the bus, and then I'm to the station at about 8:20. And then Todd and Michelle, they like to arrive a little bit early. Their mornings are a little bit freer, so they're trying to get to the studio by like 7 o'clock in the morning just to kind of finish writing up some intros.
And you said that they've got to do all their own, like, they do their own clothes.
They do
make
their
sure
own
they don't
clothes.
get the shine on their face.
They've got all the makeup that they do on their own, their hair, everything like that. So that's another reason they're in early, is just to make sure that they've got, everything taken care of on that back end as well, and all their microphones.
I think that was one of the first things I asked you. I looked at Todd and I was like, man, that guy is gorgeous. Do you guys have a whole team that does him up? And you're like, nope, he does that himself.
Oh, believe me, I wish we could be like Good Morning America. And it's really funny. We get, especially like some of our clients that are like bigger based, like if it's a specific recording artist. I mean, every now and then, we get lucky and they come in. That's one of the questions they always ask. Do you have a makeup artist? Do you have this? I'm like, no. And actually, what was it? Oh, it was back in the day when we had their show, like the 1-7. To actually kick off the show, Shaggy was in town.
Oh, Mr. Boombastic?
Mr. Boombastic was on the town, and he came in, and I called up his manager, like, hey, is there any chance he can come out on our little patio and do like a little concert, to kick off my show? I don't know how this all worked out, but it worked out. And you've got him on our show opening it up. And that was the one thing. They're like, well, does he have makeup? Do you guys have a makeup artist? Do you have this and that? I was like, well, no. But I was like, if he brings some, I'll touch him up. So here I am in like our green room, touching up, trying to, so he doesn't have any shine, like all that. Like it was pretty funny. So yeah. So to your point,
one more thing that you've done at that studio is you've done makeup.
I have done makeup.
Celebrity makeup.
There you go. So exactly. So we don't have anyone that does it. So, but if you come in and you really need, kind of the de-shine a little, that you're just gonna have to be like, hey, Andrea, I've got some extra in the back.
Well, I came in and I brought a hat just because. I don't have much on the front half of my head. I was like, hey, if I am just shiny, then let me know. I got a little hat with a small brim I can put on.
Right. People ask all the time, like, do I need a hat? Do I need this? Do I need that? And yeah.
Because I'm sure I do get a shine, especially if I'm a little bit nervous. I had one moment in the green room. I was in there by myself because I like to try to show up early anyway. I'm just in there by myself. I got a book in my hand. And I'm just kind of like, thinking like what's going to happen, going over it and over it and over it. And then at some point, this profound panic set in where I was just like, what am I doing here? And then another person walked in and was like, oh, hi, are you going to be on the show too? And then it was gone. And I was like, oh, okay.
And that's one thing that, by the time I get to the station, and then hopefully, if everyone's there, my crew's there, I get to be the one person that gets to greet everybody and welcome everybody.
And you're very good at it too, because you seem really happy to be there. And when people that are somewhere are happy to be there, it just automatically makes you like, oh, okay.
And that's one thing I feel like we do really well at our station, is we really are really very welcoming. And it's truly genuine, because all of us, including me, we love what we do.
Yeah.
And I want to make people feel very comfortable, because for somebody that's never been on TV, it is nerve-wracking. Their heart's pounding. They're sweaty. Like, it's like your typical, like, oh my gosh, like you said, oh my gosh moment. Like, I'm going on TV. What am I doing? Like, how does this all work?
I'm like, what if I accidentally say the F word? Like,
right. Do you have the button that hits the, right? Do you have the button that can, yeah.
I tweeted that too. I was like, I was on live TV. I didn't swear either. And then Michelle was like, thank you very much for not swearing.
but just, trying to give everybody little tips and tricks. So when they're on air, that makes them feel really comfortable. And I love being that person to be able to do it. And I think that was one thing during COVID that was really hard, is because at that point, all of our interviews were Zoom. And it's really hard to have that personal connection over Zoom, to be able to calm somebody down and be like, it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was really hard. But I keep telling everyone, I think my one big advice to somebody that comes in, you're here because you're talking usually about an event. You're talking about something that you are super passionate about. And 100%, you know that topic inside and out.
Yeah.
So you just have to sit down on that couch and have a conversation with Michelle and Todd and just be really passionate. And if you're passionate about it and you let that show, that's going to make for a really good segment and a really good interview.
Yeah. And well, Michelle was amazing too, because she has this thing. I don't know. Do people that interview, do they go through a good amount of training and do their own research on how to engage and do all that kind of stuff?
So it's a lot of stuff that just, going throughout the years, both Todd being from the radio side, and Michelle doing years and years of television, you just start to kind of get a rhythm and get a knack for, questions to ask and kind of how late.
Well, with her, it was even body language and facial expressions. There was a couple times where I think she saw me kind of looking around at all the stuff in the room, and she just had this way of looking at me that was kind of back over here.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah, and Todd and her do that so well too, where they just kind of are able to keep everybody just kind of focused on them.
Yeah.
And I really like to say they guide the interview. They're your guide. They're going to take you from the start to the end, and really help you through it.
I mean, there's several times in here where I'm like, oh, I'm going to edit that. But they can turn on a dime so fast with a fully formed sentence. It blows my mind.
They can. And it's truly just years of practice and just years of talking to people and having everyday conversations and getting comfortable. And that really translates to what we do on air. And that's what I like to say too. There are some people where they're totally different, in studio versus outside of the studio.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to say with the morning mix, you really truly get what you get, because the way they are in our studio is, if you meet them on the street, they're going to be exactly like that. I mean, incredibly warm, welcoming, genuine. I mean, that's what you're going to get.
And when I came off the show, I can't remember, same day, next day, I talked to Mike, and I was like, dude, that was so weird. First of all, I was like, there was 2 or 3 people at the most besides the guests in the room at any one time. That was weird. All the cameras are just this one gigantic spider curled around you. Oh, okay. But everything that was going on in the room, just everything looked super relaxed. We walked back there. You were just like, yeah, just kind of keep your voice down. And I'm like, oh, okay. And we're watching. The guy comes up, does his quick little, today the weather's going to be, he does it super fast. One take. Felt like I was listening in on someone's conversation, the way that he was looking and talking to the camera. And then Todd did something where he was on the camera, and then it switched to some graphics, and then he just walks over, leans up against the desk real casual, and keeps talking. I'm like, wait a minute, what is going on around here? I feel like we're in somebody's living room right now. Everybody's just very, very laid back, professional when the camera's on, but just kind of oh, okay. And then shoulder up against the wall. you know?
Oh, absolutely. And that's the way we like it. We want to say, this is your home now for the next, hour. We want you to be comfortable. And that's how you.
And that seems unique too. I haven't been on a lot of shows, but Mike was like, it is uniquely casual there.
Yeah, no, it really is. And I think that's kind of what we've always wanted to have, is something that is a little more casual, because we just feel like you relax a little bit more.
Yeah.
And if you're casual, you're relaxed a little bit more. You're not going to be as nervous. So then your interview is going to definitely go a lot better than, if you're scared to death, or nobody, really gives you the ropes of how to do it or what you're doing. And so, that's something I think that we've always really wanted to have, is something that's a little bit more casual and relaxed.
You said that you had pretty much full creative control, right? So then did you pick the on-air talent and then decide okay, we're going to go to 2 hosts and all that too, and go through the process of hiring and interviewing?
So right away, when we started the show, it was Leanne Town at the time. And she was, at that point, had done reporting for the news side, and then had just started doing weekend mornings as the host. And so right away, we knew that Leanne was going to be the host of the show. I mean, she, at that point, always into her crafting. We had her big segments with her shopping stuff. And it made sense that she was the right person for the job at that point in time. So we started the show with just one host with Leanne. And I think at that point, the purpose of it, too, was to see how the show was going to do.
Yeah.
Was it going to bring in money? Because like we had, talked about it, there's part of it that is paid content. Will it bring in the money that we want it to bring in? Number one, are people going to watch it? I mean, for us, ratings are still important, part of that show. And so things were actually going really well and fine. And then we found out
because people could be paying to come on all day, but if nobody watches,
then what's the purpose?
And people will stop paying. Yeah,
right, exactly. So then we found out
that's a strange balance to it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. And then we found out Leanne was pregnant. So I'm like, okay, we're gonna have to have somebody come in. And like we talked about, you can't really have somebody on the news side who is an anchor or host hosting the morning mix and the paid content because like we said, the advertising and the news, it doesn't mix.
Right.
So you have to find somebody that, can do that outside of it. Todd, weird as it sounds, back in the day when I was producing in South Bend, he was on the radio in South Bend. And there were a couple times where we actually did segments with his radio station. And I was the producer talking in his ear and my reporter's ear way back in the day. So I find it really funny that Todd is now working with me.
Yeah.
And we had this like small little connection way back in the day.
What kind of station was he? Was he doing like a DJ morning talk?
DJ morning talk and everything like that. So it's just really funny how that all kind of came together. But anyway, so he was up here in Grand Rapids at one of the radio stations, kind of has hopped around a bit. And then was at MLI for a while doing kind of who's like their entertainment concierge is, I guess, kind of what his title was.
Sounds cool.
And so MLI was going through some restructuring at that point. And so I was like, oh, Todd. And I immediately reached out to him and said, hey, can you do me a favor? While Leanne is on maternity leave, are you willing to come and fill in for her and help us out? And we got to talking and everything like that. And then before you know it, literally Leanne's on maternity leave and she had the baby early too. So literally the week that Todd stepped in, we were supposed to go through training. And literally it was like one day later, we just tossed them on air. So he's done radio, done TV for about 24 hours. And next thing you know, you have Todd Chance on the morning mix. So that's how that all kind of like came to be. And there, during that time,
I'm sorry. I've got that look on my face right now because it's always fun to think of like just the strange way that people come together on things. Like I just started watching the Industrial Light and Magic on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
And it's there's this guy that was a carpenter, but he knew how to hang lights, so we got him.
Oh my gosh, it's totally like that.
Yeah.
It's totally like that, where he knows how to ask the questions. He's used to being in front of a mic. It was just a matter of getting him to figure out the teleprompter, I think, was his biggest enemy to some extent. And just realizing that he has a screen that he needs to look at a camera.
Yeah.
Can't just, deviate to one side or be like,
because radio, it's always, you're just flying from the seat of your pants half the time, right?
Right, where I have a little more scripting in there that he's got to follow, So, we've kind of got to go with it. But he just generally came in and did a really nice job. And then my wheels started turning. Looking at our other stations, they had all female that were, the leaders or the hosts of their show. Mm-hmm. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, I want to be different, because if I want to get to other clients, other advertisers, everything can't be a female. Like there's got to be some content that gravitates towards the, men, towards males.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm like, you know what? I think this would be the perfect opportunity to, when Leanne comes back, that we put the two of them together. That is Leanne and Todd. So I went, talked to my general manager, and lo and behold, somehow, I don't know how we did it, but it worked out. And it was probably another one of my favorite moments, was the fact that all came together the way it did.
Huh.
Yeah.
So then they hosted the show for a while.
Yep.
But Todd was the solo host for a bit, right?
For a bit, while when Leanne left, Todd was the solo host, and then we started looking for somebody else to be a part of that show.
Okay, because I think that's when the show first came on my radar. It was just Todd.
Yep.
And then I told Mike, I was like, oh yeah, I got interviewed by Michelle. He's like, oh, I haven't met her yet. I was like, what? You've been there 4 times. How have you not met her? She's like, she just started.
Yeah. So Michelle came to us from Traverse City and was up there, and then she was doing our morning news for about a year. And then we started looking for somebody else to work with Todd. We had one or two people that we were kind of strongly kind of leaning towards. But then after kind of really looking closer in-house, knowing that Michelle had done some lifestyle show, segments and different things up in Traverse City, it just made sense to bring her into the fold, into the morning mix. So who knew, we had somebody right there perfect at the station this whole time when we were kind of looking outside. Did a few test runs with the two of them, and then it made sense that Michelle and Todd were going to be, really truly the next leads for the morning mix. And it was kind of nice too, because it did give me a chance to quote unquote reinvent the wheel, rebrand it. We have all new graphics, new music, kind of a new feel to the show. Yeah. So in a weird way, it was kind of nice to be able to have the opportunity to do some refreshing on the back end.
And I like the two host format too, just because you have one person interview somebody here, you have another person interview somebody here, and you just kind of feel like you get kind of a different perspective. Well, I mean, you literally do. You get a different perspective on one show instead of just all one perspective. Not that there's anything wrong with Todd's perspective. Todd's a good guy, I guess.
Yeah, but
I actually didn't get to talk to Todd at all because you talked to me, Lindsay talked to me briefly, and Michelle even came back and said hi real quick before I went out there, but I didn't get a chance to interact with Todd. Yeah. Todd, next time, buddy.
Yeah, I was going to say, ready, Todd. And that's one thing, too, is each of them, Todd and Michelle, have their, like anybody, we all have our strengths and weaknesses. Mm-hmm. And they have some of interviews that I know they do really well, and some interviews where I know they may struggle a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's really another thing is on me to really pay close attention to that, to be able to pair them up, so to speak, with who I think they do a really nice job with.
Well, if one likes to read a lot and one's more like a outdoorsy, then you give one person the author, the other person the person with the kayak paddles.
Exactly. Yeah. And that also makes for a really good interview when you're able to do that and have that option, or when it's something like cooking and, all hands on, I just toss them both in, go make a mess. Good luck. Let's see what comes out of the segment, and that's a lot of fun too. So, and then, to be able to realize, okay, last time, maybe Todd interviewed so-and-so, so maybe Michelle should do it this time. So like you said, to have a different perspective and a different take on what the topic is. So it's really nice to have those two hosts. And I'm really thankful that that's just kind of the way it gravitated or ended up, working out. So, yeah.
Do you see yourself doing this until somebody tells you can't then?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, there are some different things within kind of the Scripps organization where I have kind of wanted to help a little bit some other lifestyle shows maybe grow within our corporation.
Ooh, yeah.
To where I feel like I've kind of, grown into my role and would love to, because somebody had mentioned to us that out of our entire Scripps station that, our lifestyle shows was one of their top shows. And so knowing that, I'm like, oh, well, then if there's other shows struggling, what can I do to I want to know what I can do to help out some of these other stations. So that's another, I don't know, who knows what that would ever morph into. But I truly love what I do.
It seems like it.
So I can't
you seem
imagine.
Just as happy outside of work as you do at work. And not a lot of people can say that.
So I don't know where else I would I feel like I don't know where else I would go where I would just feel comfortable and just content, I guess. Yeah.
I guess if there's anything that I could put on here that would help creative people that aren't necessarily looking to get into TV and journalism type media, but would like to have the benefit of getting exposure, I just kind of dumb luck made friends with somebody who happens to be a friend of the show.
Right.
But how would somebody who has, assuming they have a worthwhile thing to talk about,
right?
How would they reach out to somebody at not necessarily Fox17 Morning Mix, but any type of place like that?
Just in general, big thing is social media these days. So message on Facebook to them. I feel like a lot of the stations are really high on the social media.
Yeah. Will that get you farther these days than an email with a press release?
It depends on if you send the press release to the right email. So as long as you check that out, I mean, usually on the very bottom, there's a, media inquiry or whatever.
Yeah.
So just make sure that you send it to the right email. Press releases, I feel like between email and then the social media stuff are pretty much the big thing. So messaging, Facebook, I think for at least, our station, but anyone, that's a big thing.
It probably helps to be active on social media
too. So if they can get in touch with you. So that's the other thing is if you do send stuff to us, make sure that we can easily respond to you. So have a phone number, have, email address for the news. They're literally planning like the day before Morning Mix. I'm kind of like 2 to 3 weeks out because I have a little more planning leeway, so to speak.
Yeah.
But sometimes my guests fall through, and I've had you on before, and I know, we can talk again about X, Y, and Z, or we can like change it up.
Yeah.
I've got your phone number. I've got it literally like I feel like on speed dial, so I can give you a call like, hey, can you come in tomorrow? Can you do a quick turnaround?
Yeah.
And come on, be on the show. So yeah.
Ooh, quick plug. Right around Halloween, if anybody bails on you last minute,
I'm calling.
And you need a spooky read for Halloween,
I'm calling.
Yeah,
I'm calling. But yeah, so and that's the other thing. I just tell people too, like when you send your press releases, I don't need like 10 pages. I need pretty much right to the point. If it's something too, that can just be like what we call like just a simple like VO, so like a reader that the host can read, even to talk about your event. Make sure pictures are attached. Make sure I can open your pictures. There are a lot of times with all the newfangled drop boxes and this and that I have to like reply to you and be like, hey, can I have access to your pictures? And that just makes my head spin. So, couple pictures, simple press release.
I don't know what it is, but the same thing, even when it comes to like reaching out to people to try to get on, in a magazine or on a TV show or whatever, like just because I'm not super familiar with it, I don't know what it looks like to be the person who's being reached out to as well. That, it's hard to know what works, what sounds corny, what's pushing too hard.
Right.
I've got the greatest thing ever, and it would be a shame for you guys to miss out. You probably see that kind of thing too, right?
Oh, all the time. And that's the thing. I just have to think about what would my community, what would my age group, the moms, the 25 to 55, the whoever's watching, would this appeal to them? Or if it doesn't, maybe it's just not the right time, because sometimes too, not all the time, but sometimes, Halloween, October, certain things you think of certain months where you may toss something to me that makes more sense in December rather than, February. So
I randomly got interviewed on the news one time and I was like, hey, if you ever need to talk to a veteran close to Veterans Day, and they're like, what's your number? And they never called me, but
but to have kind of those like, connection, where it's like more like close to the timing of whenever an event's going to happen, kind of helps too. So, yeah.
Are there any tips or things that people do that you really like when people reach out to you, or just as importantly, maybe more importantly, things that you really don't like maybe like we talked about trying to sell yourself like you're the greatest thing ever and everybody should be thankful to talk to you.
Yeah. Oh, I love when people just, they just say hi. I do when you put like, hi, Andrea, like you actually know who my name. I know that's really,
dear sir or madam.
Dear sir, madam, or, hi, but when you personalize it and give it that personalized touch, I know that you've at least done your research. Maybe you've looked at LinkedIn and you've seen that I'm the executive producer for the Morning Mix, but you at least have some personalization that you can go to it. I'm like, okay.
That it's not just like a form letter that was BCC'd to 80 people.
Right, exactly. And I love when it's more personalized, like, hey, we've got an event coming up. This is who, it's, maybe helping, or this is some really cool product that's, helping people in Michigan, but they're able to give you some details specifically on, how it may make a difference or different products they're working on. And kind of give me a little bit of background detail to it, something that I'm like, oh, that's really interesting, or that would make a great interview.
Yeah.
And just, kind of keep that, very.
Can I get a critique on my, just my, what is it, your tagline or whatever on your press release? I think mine was, local veteran and former educator writes novel or something like that.
And I love that because it's local. It tells me it's local, because I get a ton of stuff. I literally, on any given day, 100 plus emails. And it's literally, it's the local stuff. Then I have stuff coming from my national, clients, national people that have reached out to me before, national PR agencies.
So-and-so is going to be in town. Can they come on?
So exactly. Or even like, oh, this, so-and-so's used to live in Michigan, doesn't anymore, but here's how the 10 connections work. And, this would be a great interview. But to be able to, you had that tagline of being local. That
I always feel like sometimes when I'm like, I'm a veteran, that people are like, bro, don't do that. Don't try to get stuff by saying, oh, I'm a veteran.
But I think sometimes you have to really put yourself forward a little bit.
Yeah.
And out there.
But I am.
But you are though. That's not. Yeah, that's the truth though, right?
And I wrote a book about war. I think the two kind of go together.
The two kind of go together. Well, exactly. So I just think if you just personalize it, you're really genuine. And then sometimes too, even to me, I'm okay if it's maybe like a week and you haven't heard from me. It's okay to send me another one. Hey, by the way, did you catch this? Because as I noted, I get so many emails that come in a day, and there's so many things that I'm booking, I'm changing around on my calendar that I may just genuinely, not that I haven't seen it, but just may have, just highlight it, but didn't get back or circle back. And I think it's okay to just retouch base.
I should keep that in mind too, because there was a magazine editor locally who I had just sent an inquiry like through their general inquiry thing on the website, and then the editor got back to me and was like, "Oh, this sounds interesting. Tell me more." I sent them more and then never heard back from them. It's been a couple weeks probably. Yeah,
I would totally reach out again. Be like, hey, by the way, just kind of circling back, wanted to see if, there was any interest in, this topic. We'd love to sit down and talk. Because
they might have been like, oh, that's really cool. And then 2 seconds later, they get a phone call and it's just gone.
Yeah, and that happens a lot. I mean, just because we're, in 50 different directions.
Well, you just said 100 emails in a day. I get mad. I get mad when I had 4 kids. One of them graduated from high school now, so yay. But I had at one time 4 kids that were all getting emails home daily from teachers. Some of them multiple teachers.
I feel you. I'm right there now.
I can't read all this.
I know. That's why I have a panic attack when I come back from vacation. A literal panic attack.
I can only imagine.
And this is why I feel bad because I try to disconnect when I'm on vacation and really spend time with my family.
Yeah.
But then I feel like
in the back of your mind, they're just piling up.
So my husband, he does catch me at the very once a day, and once I get the kids to bed, I'm like, okay, just going through. I'm like, okay, just got to delete a couple, highlight a couple things. Okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I think I'd have a major anxiety attack when I come back and you see 1,000+ emails. That's a lot.
Yeah. It's good though to let it go. Recently I did I didn't do a 5-day fast. I aimed to do a 5-day, and I did like a 3.5 day because I've only made it 5 days one time. And people, if you do that, you got to drink lots of smart water. You got to have bone broth. You got to make sure that you're getting salt and minerals and all those things. Yeah. But some people are like, you just don't eat? That's crazy. Well, there's more than that. Yeah. But I said, while I'm doing this, I'm also not going to get on social media at all. Yeah. And I just one day knee-jerk got on, opened Instagram, and saw you have this many notifications. Like, no. And I put it away again. Right. I was like, nope, not doing it.
Yeah.
And for a day or two, it was just like, what if I got a message from there? What if somebody tagged me in something? What if, but 3 days later, 4 days later, it was fine.
Yeah. Very much so. And that's the thing. You have to, I have to find time to just kind of put it aside for a little bit, because you really, that's really truly my whole life. It's making sure all the social medias, because that's the thing, even with, Lindsay still posting things for me, I still want to go through it to make sure things look good, and tidy all that stuff up too.
Or go, oh, this isn't in a story, we should put that in a story.
Right, exactly. Or let's maybe this doesn't make sense maybe for on air, but maybe we want to see if it works on our digital end, so let's put stuff on that end. To change things up too, so really making sure that all that's kind of tidy up. So besides the show, it's all the digital stuff.
Yeah, weird thing is, there's a write-up of me being on your show that's on MSN.com. Do you know how that happened?
So that is part of somehow how scripts and our SEO works.
Okay, I figured it was all some in-house thing that multiple companies all
multiple country, all multiple companies we all work together. And then sometimes they just pick up some stories that we've highlighted and it ends up on MSN. I think somebody mentioned Yahoo at one point that they have their segment there. So just different places like that too get picked up.
There's probably some AI aggregator that's just grab this one, put it in there, grab this one, put it in there.
Yeah, and that's another thing actually we talk about too is the fact that they keep changing the algorithms on Facebook and Instagram, or even TikTok. There's certain things that we think, are going to do really well, and they don't. Yeah. And something that we're we didn't think it was that great, explodes. So it's very interesting how that's so part of
weird.
Our world.
And even with SEO, because that's what I do for, not as much now.
Yeah.
But that's what I was doing for money before the novel came out.
Right.
And, there's certain headings you're supposed to use, H2 headings, and make sure that you have the keyword. Yep. It's best to have a number at the front. People like to know 3 to 5 ways to do things, 10 best list. and make sure that all the H2 headings start with this word and that you have a keyword density of 1.5 to
Oh my gosh, yes.
all these different things. And you do all those things just perfect and it looks interesting. You put it up there, nothing. And then you'll just kind of half-ass something, kind of whatever. And all of a sudden, bing, 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 bing. You're like, okay, I don't know what just happened.
Right. That's
By all odds, this shouldn't have gotten any hits. And this
Yeah.
should be going crazy, but...
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like that's another thing that's really interesting in our, line of business too, is what people are drawn to, what they're not, what's the reasoning behind it. Sometimes we dig into things, try to dig in a little bit more than not. And other times we just have to kind of like, okay, it is what it is. And
yeah, you guys probably do get some pretty sweet analytics though.
We do. And that's something that, luckily we're lucky not like as much as like our job, but when it comes to the sales portion of it.
Yeah.
Because when they're,
Which,
selling.
I mean, you got to sell stuff to have the station, right?
Right. Exactly. People, they do want to know, like, especially the clients that are paying, are people watching, what you have? Are they, when some of their posts are boosted, or who is it going to? Who's watching it? Are people taking a look at it?
Yeah.
And to have all that data is like really, really key and really important. So that helps us in our jobs too. Know, okay, like this is a really good client to have on, or maybe, hey, this just really isn't hitting the marks. How can we maybe adjust, or what should we change it? How can we change it up? Like if they're in studio segments and they're not doing well, maybe we need to figure out a way to make something on location or change the story we're telling. How can we do that?
Yeah.
So yeah, that really definitely plays a lot into our field and what we do. And it's very interesting too, just how, at one point, like being on the news side, that's not even something you even think about. Like, it's like, I think the biggest thing are just ratings at that point on the news side. Like, that's where you live by. But doing the opposite stuff where I'm also kind of now in the sales department to some extent, yeah, the analytics and all of that, it's another kind of interesting thing to kind of watch and see. And that's another thing how my job changed a little bit, is being in that different world of advertising that, you're usually, cut off from, or you're usually like, oh my gosh, like I have to deal with them again. Like, I mean, we're now, it's like really to some extent come full circle. I can say I've really done truly a little bit of everything, within that building, and sees, so I've seen how it kind of all operates, how it all really truly comes together.
Yeah. Well, I've had you in here for almost an hour. Does it feel like it?
No, not at all.
Yeah,
not at all.
We've been talking for 59 minutes. I'll start bringing this to a close now, which, as some of my listeners know, means that we could talk for 2 minutes or 20 minutes. Yeah, I guess if there's anything you want to say about getting into your line of work, or how to communicate with people in your line of work that are trying to get on the show that we didn't discuss already. I think we kind of
really hit all that.
We kind of went everywhere.
I would just say, like, if you're interested in like the TV industry these days, it's really about hands-on experience. I mean, if I did not...
Which is what you went back to. Find a place where you can just start doing it. Don't wait till halfway through your program.
Right. Like, I just wanted to be able to say, hey, like, I've done all this stuff already. And that just really helps give you that opening door. So if you can get an internship at a TV station, or even if it's not necessarily, you can't do that, but you can at least go in, or you can talk to somebody, just to get a true feel for what it's like that's really key. And a lot of our students, like Grand Valley, at least for us lately, Central Michigan has a broadcasting station. A lot of those do have the TV stations, that I did in college, and that, have tapes and different things that they can, show us these days. And that's really half the battle, is just knowing that. So, for like coming
really, any creative, you got to have a portfolio.
Have a portfolio and be willing to share it and be proud of it, and be willing to take criticism. That's another big thing in our business.
There's a lot of creative people that don't have thick skin, and that's the only thing holding them back, really.
It's true. And I'll be honest, I think I struggled with that a little bit when I first started.
Probably pretty common, right?
Probably. I mean, especially too.
You're younger than everybody. You're new at this.
You're new, and I remember especially in South Bend working with some really established hosts and anchors that had been there forever. Were so well respected in the community.
They're like as old as your parents.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah. And I mean, it was like, if I didn't have something right, it's like, Andrea, like do this, do that, and it's like, oh my gosh, like some days it was like I'd come home and I feel like I'd be like overwhelmed, or I'd maybe have a little cry out, break
You gotta
down,
just like sit down and like.
right. I just said, what today? Like, this is crazy. But be able to take that criticism and have that thick skin and know it's okay. Like,
criticism is good.
Yeah, it is.
Criticism means, hey, there's something you can fix. Otherwise, if somebody's like, hey, man, this is just terrible, you should do something else. That's
exactly. And that's how I think I turned it around to myself, going, okay, they're criticizing you because they think you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
And they want to see you improve. So in a weird way, I had to like twist it around in my head to be like
sports. The coaches don't just yell at the kids who like are never going to amount to anything. They're trying to build the best player they can.
Build them up.
Pull all your potential out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of had to go back and I think of it that way: is okay, they're building me up, and it's okay to be criticized. And that's how you're going to learn. You're going to learn by these people who have been in this business for ages, and, they're trying to help you. And well, it may not always come out the right way, or there may be a lot of, F words and different things, tossing around there. At least, they want to help you out and they want to see you succeed. And that was really, a big thing for me, Yeah.
That's a great takeaway and one that I don't think gets talked about enough is accepting criticism and failures. Like, don't go out trying to fail, but if something doesn't go your way, then try to figure out why and adjust.
Right. And that's another thing too, is now being like on the different end, being, a manager to some extent, being able to give out good criticism, to be able to see things improve and see things from a different light. So now kind of being on that opposite end of it a little bit, and being like, okay, like this is how you felt, how can you make it more constructive, and do it a different way. So I think that's really something too, to kind of think about as well in this business, that, you're going to get criticism. People, may not, like the way that, you've put a show together, like on the back end, or
they just might not like the station you work for.
Or might like the station you work for. They may think it's terrible, or they may not like your host in the morning, or, something like that. And you just have to be able to roll with it and know that what you do a good job. So, yeah absolutely.
Well, cool. I think I'm good, unless there's anything else you want to tell people.
I think we really covered everything.
Yeah.
We really went through a lot of it.
All in right around an hour, too.
Wow,
cool.
That's impressive.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll get off here, and then I'll walk you out of here.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, everybody. That was Andrea Shaner, producer of Fox 17's Morning Mix in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Check out Fox 17 Morning Mix. All this stuff is in the show notes, yada, yada, yada. Thank you if you're listening. Message me on Instagram. Let me know. I listened to the whole thing, and I'll give you a special shout-out.
Oh, just kidding. They liked us. We can let them.
Mwah. Bye.
Yeah, man. Weird, right?